On November 2nd, 1982, greatest sports legends host Jayne Kennedy spoke with a man whom some called the greatest basketball player ever. He was the game's master psychologist. He was a proven winner, and he never hesitated to speak his mind. His name, Bill Russell.
Gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it over to Sam Jones. Havlicek stole the ball.
Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback thinking he's in for the touchdown. The Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
Affirmed under a left-hand whip. Allier on the outside driving. Affirmed and Allier heads apart. Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7-15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron. Over to Sanders. Sanders faking. Comes into the circle. Out to Havlicek. Out to Sam. Sam comes around to the top of the circle on the cut now to Russell. He's in there. A fall away is good. To the right, holds the ball, underneath, Russell steals the ball. Russell a right-handed hook, it's good! 100 out to Baylor driving the lane, he lays it up, is blocked by Russell. Blocked by Russell, what a play by Bill Russell!
William Felton Russell, a winner. It was at the University of San Francisco that Bill Russell began his winning ways. The basketball world had never seen a 6'9" player with such agility. The result? 2 NCAA crowns, and that was only the beginning. In 13 years with the Boston Celtics, Russell gathered 11 championship rings, and his career didn't stop there. Bill Russell, coach of the Seattle Supersonics. Bill Russell, corporate spokesman.
Hey, miss! I can't miss by long distance.
Bill Russell, color announcer. It's been a successful career for a man who's always done only what he's wanted to do.
I could never work to be liked, because it's not that important. I think the one thing that I am most proud of about myself is that I realize that it is far better to understand than to be understood.
What is more important to you, to be respected by others or to have your self-respect?
It's a combination. It's to make the respect. If you respect yourself, others will respect you. It follows. They may not like you, but they'll respect you.
On the basketball court, Bill Russell was equally respected by both his adversaries and his teammates.
Bill Russell was the type of person that placed team victory above anything else. He never set out to establish any personal goals. I think the biggest compliment you can pay a person like that is he made everyone on our team a better player.
I think if I were starting a team of all of the players I've ever seen, I would have to start with Bill Russell. I've always felt that he was the greatest player that ever walked on the court. His defense was such a factor, and anytime you got within 10 to 12 feet of the basket, you just didn't get a shot on him. I thought he would be my #1 player.
When you talk about a great dynasty in basketball, you naturally think about the Boston Celtics because they won 9 straight championships. They won 11 out of 13 years. And I think all this can be attributed to one guy that caused this dynasty, and this guy is a bearded wonder, Bill Russell.
In my opinion, the greatest basketball player that ever played the game. There's no question about that. He changed the game. He was a devastating force. He had everybody on the other team more worried as to what he was going to do and the way he was than anything else. It was unbelievable what he would do.
The way you would walk out onto the court, the slow gait, the fact that you wore the goatee, which was a little bit unusual at that time, the psych out was very essential to you. I think you were probably one of the masters at that.
The master.
The master, okay. Who would be second?
I don't know. A lot of runner-ups. Nobody knows who finished second.
Well, why were you the master at it?
I understood that the game was played by very insecure people. I never forget, there was a guy named, one of the great players that most people don't realize how great he was, a guy named Walter Bellamy. He was a great player. Physically, I was not up to him that some nights. So I'd say, well, what am I going to do? So I'd say to him, I started talking to him. I would play very hard defense to keep him from getting the ball, and then I'd say to him, how come they don't pass you the ball? You know, and I've been working like a dog for the last 5 minutes
Right.
to keep him from
getting the ball.
And then say, hey, man, what do you, nothing? They don't give you the ball? He'd say, yeah, they don't treat old Walter right. And then I'd have him diverted. And I'd say, whew, boy, because, you know, and there are nights when you can't play. You're just not up to it. There's no player that can play up to his physical ability or mental ability every night. And so you've got to be able to maintain a high level of efficiency. And there are different ways of doing it. So I understood what the important things were. And the bottom line was the most important thing was the final score.
The Boston Celtics win the world title.
Bill Russell, Boston Celtics. 4 words that had become inextricably linked. But when he came out of college, Bill never dreamed he'd be drafted by the Celtics. How did he get there?
Well, that was one of the moves that Red Auerbach made. He had a player that he was going to lose, a guy named Ed McCauley. So Red made the St. Louis team a deal. We'll give you Ed McCauley, who was an all-star player, and you give us your first-round draft pick. And then he had to convince Rochester, who had the first pick in the league, to not draft me. And all this is going on, and I didn't want to play with any of these teams. I wanted to play with Minneapolis. And that's the one thing that Will Chamberlain did that I always wanted to do. He got to play with the Lakers.
So he does have one up on you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the only one you'll admit to, right?
That's the only one I can think of.
Who's better, Bill Russell or Will Chamberlain? That's the basketball question that dominated the decade of the 1960s. If points and rebounds are the measure of greatness, then there was no question. Wilt was the better player. If team championships are the measure of greatness, then it wasn't even close. Russell won 11 of them. Chamberlain, 2. Wilt Chamberlain talked about Bill Russell with his host, Tom Seaver.
Russell had a lot of pluses going for him, you know, because he had one job to do and one job only. I had several that I had to do. I had to score at times, to rebound, to play defense. And, you know, I did the best I could. I think that most of my teams did the best they could. I think the Boston teams were just better. The coaching was just better. So, therefore, they won the big ones.
The team was better, but it does not necessarily mean that one individual was better than the other.
Oh, no, I don't think as far as individual talent goes that Russell even comes close.
I thought he was a great player, real great player. And as they say in boxing, a worthy adversary.
What were his best qualities?
I don't know which was the best, his strength or his smarts, because he's equally adept at both. I thought he was a great player. Of course, I thought I was better.
Explain what happened in the incident in 1969.
Well, as I said before, I thought it was basketball's an art form. And that was my last year, and I had it a way I wanted to finish my career. And everything seemed to work. And then in the last game, we were beating them pretty good.
Celtics now trying to hang on. Havlicek, jump shot, no good. Chamberlain gets the rebound, and he calls timeout. The big guy is in pain, and Laker coach Butch von Bredekoff is going to have to take Chamberlain out of the game.
And I said that in the championship game, if I got hurt bad enough to come out of the game, I would go straight to the hospital. And I probably shouldn't have said that because he hadn't done anything to me. But I'm too hard-headed to apologize, so that's the way it goes.
What about now? Is it ever too late?
I don't even think about it anymore. It's something that's passed. I know I shouldn't have done it. He knows I shouldn't have done it.
Would it make a difference?
Not really. I'm sure that we both are able to live our lives without that interfering with it too much.
Who is, in your opinion, the greatest center in the history of basketball?
Me. I don't confine it to just a center. And the reason I say that is, I think Oscar Robertson had far more basketball skills than I did. I think Elgin Baylor had more basketball skills. I think Wilt Chamberlain had more basketball skills. I think Jerry West had more basketball skills. That's just to name a few. In fact, I think John Havlicek, who played with me, had more basketball skills. I combined the physical skills, the intelligence, and most important of all, the humanitarian aspect. I realized that it was people. And I did things verbally and psychologically that made me a better player.
Bill, what made the Celtics such a great team year in and year out?
Well, we assembled a good team and kept it intact. And we only changed personnel when guys retired. We, in the 13 years I was there, we only made one trade. And you'll find that probably more than any other team in history of sports that you had so many players that was the only team they ever played for.
The Boston Celtics, the dynasty, led by this man, Red Auerbach, and by Bill Russell, who joins the team in 1957. That year, the Celts beat the St. Louis Hawks in 7 games to win their first championship. Two years later, the Celts defeat the Minneapolis Lakers to win their second championship in 3 years. The Boston Celtics, Sharman, Heinsohn, Ramsey, and Bob Cousy, the master passer. Cousy was the playmaker, and it was he who received much of the credit in those early years. Russell remembers him.
I was a great player, and one of the finest human beings I ever met anywhere. A good man.
1960, Wilt enters the league. The result is the same, another Celtic championship. 1961, the Celts win their 3rd straight crown, and the dynasty is firmly established. Sam Jones emerges from the shadow of Bill Sharman in 1962 as the Celtics win again. Bill Russell remembers Sam Jones.
Well, what Sam used to do was, he used to talk to Wilt on the court. I would set a pick on his man, so he'd be free to shoot his favorite shot. And he'd stop and hesitate and say to Wilt, Wilton, Norman, Chamberlain, you have to come out here. And he'd say all 3 names.
Yeah.
He wouldn't just say Wilt, he'd say Wilton, Norman, Chamberlain, you got to come out here. You better come on out here, I'm gonna make this. And then he'd shoot and make it.
1963, Bob Cousy's farewell. The Celts win 1 for Coos. K.C. Jones takes over as playmaker in 1964 and steers the Celts to their 6th straight crown. Russell remembers K.C. Jones.
He taught me, probably taught me more than anybody else in the world about basketball.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
Oh, yes, I love him dearly. I just love him. I love him as much as I love any member of my family.
That's quite a compliment.
Well, he's quite a man.
1965, semifinals. One of the most famous plays in basketball history occurs when
Deep and Havlicek steals it. It's all over.
Havlicek's steal against the 76ers powers Boston to the finals versus the LA Lakers and another title. (1966). Russell and company are determined to give Coach Red Auerbach a going-away present. In Auerbach's finale, the Celts do it by memory. It's their 8th straight championship. Russell remembers Red.
The Celtics were playing very well, and this black guy asked me, says, do you think that the Celtics, the reason it's so popular is that they're trying to get an all-white team? I thought about Red, and I said, no. I said, Red would put 5 gorillas out there if he thought he could win a championship with them.
1968. Bill Russell and John Havlicek carry on the Celtic tradition. Havlicek is the Celts' leading scorer in Boston's victory over the Lakers. Russell remembers John Havlicek.
John was the best player I played with. And again, a better person than a player.
1969. Bill Russell does what he does best, play defense, as the Celtics go up against Wilt and the Lakers. The Celtics win in 7, their 11th championship in 13 years. The Boston Celtics, the dynasty. Made possible by Bill Russell.
Bill, we're going to play a little bit of a word association game. I'll mention something and you tell me what it brings to mind. Celtics.
A unique situation where you had these strong people working in a lot of different ways for the same thing.
Wilt Chamberlain.
Great, great player. Unique personality. And complete and competent adversary.
Oh, he would like to hear you say that. Okay, Red Auerbach.
I think he's the greatest coach in the history of professional sports. Period, no exceptions.
The mention of basketball, what does that recall for you?
I guess to me, basketball now is like being with a woman that we used to be lovers, and now we're friends. And that I understand, and I care about, and I want her to be happy because she's a friend of mine.
Now, when this morning we went to breakfast, and you said, how far do we have to walk? Because I don't want to walk any further than I have to. I could imagine from that statement that, no, you don't want to get out on the floor again.
No, I love exercise. I can watch it all day, but I don't want...
Bill Russell, the defensive genius. Only one statistic ever mattered to Bill Russell, the final score. He won 11 NBA championships. Bill Russell, a winner.
I could not imagine that in 1975 or 76, whenever it was, of all the basketball players and coaches that have been in this country, that I was the first black player to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. I couldn't believe that. People used to ask me, are you a basketball player? And I always said no. Because I always felt that's what I did, that's not what I was. I played basketball, but I was never a basketball player. I'm a man that played the game. And then maybe it's, my ego's getting carried away, but I always felt that people come to me talking to me about basketball would be the same thing as me going up to Einstein and saying, let's talk about mathematics.